Welcome to the video. My name is Kane and today I'll be doing my first ever game review for Black Myth Wukong on PC. First, let me start off by saying that I didn't start recording until pretty late into my playthrough, so the majority of gameplay that you'll see in the background is from the later chapters of the game, but that shouldn't matter too much as it'll still give you a taste for what this game has to offer. The way I'll be doing my reviews on this channel is by breaking games down into three main categories: gameplay, story, and my overall opinions, both good and bad. First off, we'll start with the gameplay. I've been seeing a lot of people call this a Souls-like, but in my opinion it plays more like a faster-paced version of the new God of War games, with some Souls-like elements sprinkled in between. Your primary source of damage is going to be your light attack combos until you gradually build up your focus meter, giving you focus points, which you can then use for a heavy attack, mid-light combo for greater damage, or a charge attack which you can use at your convenience whenever you have the opportunity. You also have 4 spell slots at your disposal, which you'll learn more of throughout the game. These spells consist of things such as the ability to freeze enemies in place, allowing you to get in some free hits or escape if the pressure is too great. Turn into stone, which allows for a well-timed parry if you use it in between your opponent's combo. And even a Shadow Clone Jutsu spell that can give you the opportunity to Jujutsu Kaisen jump your boss that's been pissing you off to no end. Pretty much all the spells felt useful and well thought out, which is always great to see. A couple more mechanics that make this more similar to God of War is that there's a gear system that allows you to craft better armor and weapons once you progress through the story and have the required materials. Some of these are only found exclusively in hidden side content. Plenty of the armor sets and weapons looked really badass, which encouraged me to explore, because I wanted to collect just about every single set that I could. The second mechanic, more like God of War, is the leveling system. As opposed to using souls to raise your stats, you can earn skill points with every level, which then goes towards the fairly traditional skill tree. You can unlock various new skills, such as a mid-combo parry that requires good timing and rewards skill, raising different individual stats, kinda similar to Dark Souls, up to a certain cap, and 2 different stances outside of the base one for a total of 3 stances which you can freely switch between at will, somewhat similar to Devil May Cry. And each stance excels in something slightly different, resulting in an overall smooth combat experience that I really enjoyed. Now let's talk level design. There are 6 chapters in the story, each having a different theme, which covers the majority of each section. Chapter 1 is mostly a lush and vibrant forest. Chapter 2 is a dry but mostly well-designed desert. Chapter 3 is a gorgeous ice biome. Chapter 4 takes place in a vile, spider-infested cave. Chapter 5 is a spicy hot volcano. And while Chapter 6 brings it back to the forest, but this time with a really cool twist that I would rather avoid spoiling. Unreal Engine 5 really shows off just how gorgeous each area is, and there's plenty of eye candy for everyone who's obsessed with graphics. There is a large amount of enemy variety, which is really great to see, as it leaves each area feeling unique with a new challenge around every turn. Luckily, this variety also extends to the bosses, which have plenty of unique designs with visually amazing movesets, stone monsters, giant animals, demons, and various Chinese mythical creatures. It all really helps Wukong stand out from the competition. Now on to the story segment. I'm just going to preface this by saying that I haven't read Journey to the West, and because this game leans very heavily into Journey's story, there are quite a few segments where I honestly had no idea what was going on. Whether you think the game should have explained this beforehand is subjective, so I'm just going to talk about what I understood. The game starts with you playing as the original Sun Wukong as you stand among the clouds ready to fight against a celestial court and who I assume to be Wukong's rival, Erlang. After a fierce and very visually impressive duel, Wukong is ultimately defeated, causing him to turn to stone and his soul splitting into 6 different relics that contain his power. After some time, another monkey, referred to as the Destined One, is tasked with scouring the map in search of these relics and hope to revive Sun Wukong. But as expected, things are never easy. While I personally didn't understand much, the gameplay and main objective were still more than enough to keep me pushing through, especially considering all the well-designed characters you'll encounter along the way, some of which containing their own little side quest. The majority of side quests are similar to Souls games, where you'll talk to someone, either find a specific item, or kill a certain optional boss, which then results in you receiving an item and sometimes a touching cutscene. The side quests are for the most part nothing too crazy, but they still add to the overall experience, resulting in a more fleshed out game that helps encourage more exploration. The majority of them are definitely worth doing as well, since they contain extremely useful crafting materials, weapons, or even curios, which are basically this game's versions of talismans. Considering I still managed to enjoy the story content with little background knowledge, I'm sure if you've read Journey to the West, it'll become an even more fulfilling experience. Before the game came out, some article became the subject of debate because it stated that this game contains no woman? But clearly they didn't even play past the first 2 chapters, considering that chapter 3 and basically every chapter afterwards does in fact contain women. And pretty well written, interesting ones at that. You might even feel a little different about Spidussi after playing chapter 4, and as an arachnophobe, I promise you that's saying something. Now I'm going to talk a bit about how my personal thoughts about the game, things that I might not have been the biggest fan of, but they weren't enough to detract from the overall experience. If anything, it's things that they could improve in perhaps future DLC, expansions, or even a sequel, which, judging by the sales numbers, this is almost certainly gonna get. So first off, there's not that much combo variety, which can eventually lead to the combat feeling repetitive, since you can easily get around 40 hours of gameplay. I guess the way they could easily fix this in future games by just, adding more combos. And this is also kind of strange to me because late in the game you unlock, I think it's called the Wukong stance, but it allows you to do various different combos mid-light combo depending on how many times you press square. But that's only for a very small, limited portion of the game. But again, it's not that big of a problem. It's something that can easily be fixed. Sometimes spells just don't work, but they'll still consume both your mana and go on cooldown. And what I mean by this is, I noticed it almost exclusively when fighting certain bosses, but for example, I would use the immobilize spell to keep them frozen in place, but sometimes it just wouldn't do anything, and yeah, I just still lose my spell, which could definitely put you in a tight spot, depending on how much you were expecting it to work. But again, small complaint, didn't happen too many times, but quite an easy fix. I feel like almost every modern game has this issue to some degree, but the camera. And the camera can sometimes be a greater enemy than the bosses themselves. And this is most notable when fighting flying enemies, as sometimes the camera can clip to the floor, making it so that all you can really see is directly up Sun Wukong's ass, or basically you can just get a good look at the design of the flooring, which when I'm in the middle of receiving an 8-hit combo isn't really what I'm trying to look at. But yeah, I mean, that's a small tweak. It's something I've almost gotten used to at this point. And let's see, there's no way to recharge your mana. So unlike the Souls games, when you use magic and it consumes your mana, you can usually decide to sacrifice some of your Estus flask for some mana flask, but nothing like that really exists in this game. There's one gourd, and a gourd, the gourd in this game is basically just your Estus flask, that when you use it, it gives you a little bit of mana back, but it's such a small amount that you would basically have to waste 2 flasks just to cast any spell, so it's certainly not really worth it, but it is better than nothing. So hopefully in the future or an expansion they add some sort of mana flask, as the spells really help intensify the combat, and once you run out you feel a lot more defenseless. And finally, I hope to see in a sequel more ways to defend, as all you really have right now is the rock solid spell, but that also has a cooldown and it consumes mana, so it's not something you can really consistently rely on. And other than that, you really just have your roll spam. You also have that resolve combo I mentioned earlier in the skill tree, but that also requires a focus point, so you still have to have a focus point to parry. Again, it's not something you can do consistently. So hopefully in the game there's maybe some sort of guard button, or maybe a more similar to Sekiro type parry, as against some of the late game bosses it can begin to feel very roll spammy, and that's not really what I'm trying to get out of this game. You know, this isn't Elden Ring. As I said, it plays more like God of War. You have more of a power fantasy, so I would like to feel, you know, more back and forth with the boss and not just have to roll so much, but again, it is what it is. And with that, I'm on to my final score. So since this is my first review, I'm going to explain my ranking system a little bit. I'm not going to rank every single game on just one flat 1 through 10 scale. I'm going to rank games by category. So, you know, fighting games get their own 1 through 10, racing games get their own 1 through 10, action, RPG, etc., etc. So, considering everything I've said in this video, considering that I genuinely enjoyed it and had a good time, there's no current day isms or political propaganda. It's just a fun video game, which, trust me, as of lately, that is really nice to see, and that already makes me enjoy it a bit more. But it really is a true to the flesh, just action adventure game with some pretty satisfying mechanics, and I'd have to give it a 8 out of 10. It's honestly a really good game. The only thing that could, I mean, in a sequel or some future expansions, you could easily raise that 8 out of 10 to something even higher. And maybe in something in a similar category, I would give Devil May Cry 5 like a 9 out of 10, just so you have something to compare it to, because I find Devil May Cry 5 to be almost the perfect action combo game. And while this game doesn't try to play like Devil May Cry, I think it could at least be as fun and as satisfying with just a couple tweaks, and I hope to see it again in the future. This team did a great job, especially for their first game, and it exceeded my expectations, to be honest with you, from all the hype. But thank you for watching. Feel free to give me some tweaks in the comments, things you'd like to see changed, or feel free to leave a like or subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.